I'm Void.
And I'm Beej.
And together, we're the Geek to Geek podcast. Well, we make it. It is kind of us, but I guess it's separate.
Every week, we pick a topic from geek or digital culture and chat about it for a while.
And you're invited. We talk about books and movies, games, comics, the internet.
Or really whatever we feel like.
Yeah, that too.
So look for the Geek to Geek podcast on iTunes.
Or wherever your podcasts are sold. Or downloaded. Or whatever.
Meanwhile, on the comic box, we guard the galaxy while trying not to let our ego get too big. Ego. It's a planet in the upcoming Guardians of the Kick It, Liam. No, Liam? Oh, there's no Liam. Just me then. Comics. Hey everyone, and welcome to issue 46 of the Comic Box, part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. I am Rob, your friendly neighborhood comic geek, and it is true, Liam is not joining me this week. Hopefully he'll be back next week when we review Guardians of the Galaxy. But first, I wanted to give you guys a bit of a primer. We weren't around when the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie came out, so we're going to go over some of the big plot points of the first film, just in case you haven't seen it. You should really see it, though. We will give you a brief history. This guy. I'll give you a brief history of what seemed to be the two most prominent new characters from the trailers, which is Mantis and Star-Lord's father. And then we'll try to throw out some ideas about what this film might be. I'm going to do a little bit of speculation. Now, I do need to say that while I was doing research and just trying to find like a synopsis of the film that I could use, I ran into some major spoilers, so I'm not going to put any of those out there, but I'm telling you I know them just so you can appreciate later on how difficult it's going to be for me to kind of pretend that I don't know some of the things I know. Like, I was going to speculate on who Sylvester Stallone's mystery character is going to be, but there it was right on the web page that I ended up clicking on looking for a synopsis of the movie. And it's one of those things where, and I'm not going to say anything about Stallone's character, but just in general, as far as spoilers that I learned, is it better for you to go into the movie knowing what those Easter eggs or some of those side characters that might be in the background or whatever it might be, is it better for you to know who they are to enjoy the film more? Or do I not say anything because it's a potential spoiler if by happenstance you know who these obscure characters are or plot points are, or items are, or whatever it might be. I'm trying to be as vague as possible about what's in the movie. But I think I made the decision where I'll just keep it as vague as possible, and then I will, explain as many of the Easter eggs as I can on the back end. So, without further ado, let's get into the weekly geekery with the... Do I need an introduction for weekly? Weekly. Geekery. So here's how I have been keeping it geek this week. First, I finished watching Young Justice, which was awesome. It is, I think, the first time I've watched all the way through it when it was on Netflix. I've seen it before when it was originally airing, but this was the first time that I did sort of a big rewatch, and it does have me excited for Season 3 and the stuff they're hopefully going to do with it, but apparently, according to our lovely fans on Twitter, Young Justice Season 3 is only coming out through DC's exclusive digital service. So I don't know if that's going to be an app or a paid subscription thing, but it's sort of the way that digital content is trying to go now, where it's trying to segment itself off and hide itself away in a corner, and you need to pay extra to get into that corner. So every single person, instead of everybody going to like a Netflix or a YouTube or whatever, all these content creators. And now that is also turning into, I guess, like the big guys like Warner Brothers. I mean, you have things like CW Seed, where all they do on there is provide their own episodes and bonus content or bonus shows like Vixen and things that are only available on their digital streaming service. And so now DC is going to get one of its own. And I find that annoying and tedious, but I guess so long as it's free, then I'll subject myself to their specific sponsors' advertisements that I'm sure will be part of the show. In either case, Young Justice, hooray. But I still needed something to watch while I was walking on the treadmill, so I decided to watch the first episode of Into the Badlands. Certainly not a show for kids, very much, adult martial arts, violence, and all of that stuff. It really was kind of everything that was missing from Iron Fist distilled down to one episode in that first episode of Into the Badlands, because there was a lot of martial arts action that was well done. And that includes some slightly campy things that were definitely tribute to the old kung fu movies of the 70s, because there's a little bit of zooming in and zooming out with the camera, or a little bit of wire work. And then, there's some very cool moments, some hints of maybe mysticism or something supernatural going on. Again, kind of everything that we wanted from Iron Fist, they did in the first episode of Into the Badlands, so I'm not surprised at all that I've heard people compare the two. I also got a couple more episodes in of Rick and Morty. It's still an interesting show. I like some of the ideas. I do appreciate how dark it can get as a cartoon, but the way they talk still kind of grates on me. So we will see how far I make it. I might just try and muscle through, because I know everybody loves Rick and Morty. It's kind of the new Invader Zim that everybody loves this show. So I'll see what I can do. I caught up on the Adventure Zone podcast. I am now, along with Joe and Void and everybody else, waiting for each 2 weeks before an episode comes out. So no more binging that show for me. So I had to pick up a new binge podcast. The one that I will go back to and listen to while I'm waiting for new episodes of the other couple that I listen to every week. And I decided to go with the Tolkien Professor, which has been around for several years and literally is a college professor who teaches a class on Tolkien, and he records some of his lectures, or he does Q&A episodes. And I'm going to use it as kind of a primer for myself leading up to the Tolkien convention in November that I believe I am going to be a panelist for. Beyond that, as far as gaming, a little bit of Overwatch, a little bit of Future Fight, and then I finally got back to the Batman Telltale game and got to play through one other chapter. I like how they're taking it in a very interesting direction. I do agree now with Void when he was saying that he was just really impressed with the Catwoman voiceover work. I think that voice actress does do a good job. I think most of the people on there do a pretty good job with the audio work. It's still kind of glitchy in places. There were some times where somebody came out and their mouth was moving but no sound was coming out. That might have had to do with my headphones, but I don't think so. And every once in a while when they do a cut to another camera angle, if you will, sometimes it can lock up while it's trying to do that cut, and it just pauses for a second. But I still enjoy it, and I still look forward to continuing through. And then after that, my Batman gaming is going to shift to Arkham Origins, because I downloaded that forever ago on Steam when it was just a couple of bucks, and I haven't touched it yet. So I'm looking forward to doing that. And that is my weekly geekery. So I'm going to move over to news with the news. I got one piece of news for you guys, and that's it. May 6th. Mark it on the calendars. Free Comic Book Day. It is almost here. You can go to freecomicbookday.com and see if your local comic shop is participating. And if they are, it means when they open, they are going to have a stack of free comic books that anybody can come and take. Just take one of each. And no, not like Liam says, you don't get to take any comic book for free. But they usually do have other deals going on, because they know that this is the day when people who aren't necessarily comic book readers will come in order to pick up the free comics for themselves, for their kids. There is going to be kid-friendly stuff as well as things that are more geared towards older readers. So your local comic shop might also be doing something where you can pick up some other books cheaper. And do so. Be nice. It's usually also cosplay events where people will show up in costumes, so there might be local cosplayers to take photos with. If you're a cosplayer, throw on your costume and head out there. I'm not even going to tell you it's got to be a superhero costume. Doesn't matter to me. Send me your pictures. Tag them. I don't have a good tag for that. I'm sure everybody's just going to tag it FCBD, which is sort of the abbreviation for Free Comic Book Day. So I kind of imagine that that's how that's going to go. Or I don't know, send me a message on Twitter. Or on the subreddit, you can share pictures. Though I think you have to link to Imgur. I'm going to move on because I don't know how to pronounce things. Our poll list for next week, I'm just going to tell you to go out and see Guardians of the Galaxy with us. Like, not with us personally. I mean, I guess if you really want to, you can come to Minnesota. But go out and see the movie, which means for the majority of the week, you're good to go. You can finish up reading Volume 1 if you didn't. If you want, you can go pick up Volume 2 of that 6 or 2008 Guardians of the Galaxy run. Because it's a really good run, and it might familiarize you with some of the characters you might see in this movie. Again, I can't spoil the things that I know, but it might help. But that's it. I have nothing else that I'm going to ask you guys to read for next week. Pick up some new Guardians of the Galaxy stuff. And again, I suggest that run, but I have not read any of the runs since then when they started doing the reboot stuff after that. So I can't suggest it because I don't know, because I haven't read it yet. So let's get to it. Let's get to our topic of the week with the bop-boo-doo-dow. Ba-da-boo-doo-dow. I can't stop this feeling. Topic of the week. Guardians of the Galaxy. Where are they now? Sorry. All right. So our topic of the week, obviously, is the Guardians of the Galaxy because Volume 2 is coming out also on May, well, I guess that'd be May 5th? Does that sound right? That'd be the Friday, if I think May 6th is a Saturday. So the first thing we'll do is a very quick sort of synopsis of the first movie. And I wrote down these notes just kind of off the top of my head, thinking what the main points are that are sort of good to know. So we start at the beginning of the movie. We have a boy named Peter Quill, and his mother is dying, and he is very sad about it. His mom mentions that his father came from the stars, but he's told that that is because she is, delirious in her current state. Peter's mother gives him a present, which is tucked away in his backpack, that he does not open. And then as his mother passes away, he runs out of the hospital and is promptly abducted by aliens. And one of the few things he carries with them is that backpack with the present in it and a Walkman with a mixtape called Awesome Mix Volume 1 that his mother made. And then we jump. We do a significant jump to what we'll do, finger quotes, modern day Peter Quill, now calling himself Star-Lord, played by Chris Pratt, is stealing this orb for a client of his on an alien planet called Xandar, which we will learn is the home of the Nova Corps, which is basically the Green Lantern Corps in the Marvel Universe. Just think Space Cops, or the Nova Corps. So Star-Lord, now, or Peter, however I end up continuing to refer to him, he goes after the orb, but unfortunately, other people are after this orb as well, including this bad dude named Ronan the Accuser. He's the guy with the big hammer, and he is working for another bad guy, or with another bad guy, called Thanos. And I know I'm throwing a lot of names at you if you haven't seen the movie. If you've seen any of the other Avengers movies, the big purple guy that does nothing but float in space on a chair, that's a guy named Thanos, and he is being set up to be the ultimate villain of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which is all going to culminate in Avengers Infinity War. So Thanos, sitting in his chair, or perhaps toilet, we don't know, agrees to help this fanatic, Ronan the Accuser, and says that he will destroy, he being Thanos, will destroy the planet of Xandar and wipe out the Nova Corps if Ronan gets him this orb. And now Ronan's whole beef is he is this radical from this race called the Kree, who if you watch Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is sort of this, evil alien race. I guess they're not, I don't know if they're cast as evil. I'm not that far up in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but they are an alien race, and they are where the Inhumans come from. And the upcoming Inhumans television show, this is a race of humans that were experimented upon by the Kree. The Kree also play a major role in Captain Marvel's origin, which is going to be the female-led Marvel movie. Getting off on a tangent here. So we have Peter Quill is trying to get the orb. At the same time, Ronan the Accuser is also getting the orb, and Thanos is still floating somewhere off in space. But in order to make sure Ronan does what he's supposed to, Thanos also assigns his daughter, using finger quotes, Gamora or Gamora, however you choose to pronounce it. This is the female green woman with the sword, for those of you that are only familiar with the imagery or the trailers, who is known as the most dangerous woman in the universe. Quill gets his hands on the orb, and he makes his way to Xandar. There, he is tracked down by Gamora, as well as two bounty hunters, Rocket and Groot. Rocket is Rocket Raccoon. He is the raccoon. Groot is the big tree guy who can only say, "I am Groot," and Rocket has to translate for him. So Rocket and Groot decide they're going to try and take in both Quill and Gamora, and then all four of them, big hassle, and they all end up getting arrested by the Nova Corps, and they all get thrown in prison. In this prison, they run into Drax, who is our other main Guardian. And I swear at this point, we have all of our major players. Drax is the big, also green, but he's sort of greenish blue the way they color him, and he's covered in tattoos. It's the character that Dave Bautista plays, and he is a not incredibly intelligent person known as the Destroyer, and he wants to get back at Ronan for killing his family. So now you kind of see how we're all interconnected. They meet up in prison, and these Guardians decide to work together in order to escape prison. Gamora decides that she is going to betray Ronan once she realizes that inside of the orb is the Power Stone, or one of the Infinity Stones, a gem, if you will. They're called gems in the comics, Infinity Gems, of great power that could destroy whole planets. Gamora decides that's not what she signed up for, and that she actually has her own buyer for the orb initially, I guess. So she was always kind of doing her own thing. The Guardians of the Galaxy get together, and long-ish story already, I guess, sort of short, they win. They end up getting the Infinity Stone from Ronan, and they return it to the Nova Corps. In return for their services, the Nova Corps wipes all of their criminal records, so they are free to leave. They nickname themselves the Guardians of the Galaxy, and they go off to do, as they say, a little bit of good, a little bit of bad, mix of both, something like that. I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure. But they just sort of set off together as a newfound family for adventure. Meanwhile, Thanos is still sitting on his space toilet, like he doesn't move for the whole thing. The reason I had mentioned his mom in the present is at the end of the movie, Peter finally opens up the present to see what is inside, and it is a mixtape, Awesome Mix Volume 2. So he now has new music to listen to, a new gift from his mom, and that is why the sequel is called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. And that's pretty much what we got. There are other characters in here, like the Collector, who was trying to get the Infinity Stone for himself because he, surprise, collects things. And we have, Cosmo, the canine cosmonaut, and Howard the Duck in bonus scenes there and that sort of thing. But for the most part, that's our story. So a ragtag group of rebels who all band together in order to save the galaxy, and then they just sort of fly off into the sunset. Now we get to Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, and the trailers that we've been shown are honestly pretty vague, which is awesome. The only major bombshell that's been dropped on us is that Kurt Russell shows up and simply says, "I'm your dad, Peter." And that's it, and that's all we get. Now, we have been told, and I have said it on this podcast, so minor spoiler, I guess, that he was supposedly playing Ego the Living Planet, and that was news that dropped before we actually saw him as a person in the trailer. The only other things we know from the trailer is there's clearly some other big war going on with a bunch of ships flying around. Groot is, after sacrificing himself in the first movie, and then at the end of the first movie has grown and is a little plant in a pot, is now Baby Groot, as they refer to him in the trailer. So he's still not fully grown. He's just a little guy. He's about the size of a pop vinyl figure. And but they still give him a cute little uniform to run around in. And he can still clearly grow himself. It shows him stretching his arms out to fight people. But we know they're talking to some sort of gold people who want them to do something or perhaps caught them. And we get a scene with the character named Mantis, who's a woman with little antenna, who is able to sort of read minds or auras or understands when somebody feels love, if you will. And that is pretty much all that we got from any of the trailers. We just know there's big things going on. Rocket builds a bomb. It appears that Yondu, who is the guy who kidnapped Peter Quill in the first one, he is the blue guy with the short red mohawk, who in the trailers for this one has the full red mohawk, and he whistles, and he has an arrow that flies around when he whistles. That, as I understand it, has nothing to do with the comics. The character he's based on was an archer, but there was no whistling arrow that I'm familiar with. Anyway, played by Michael Rooker. He appears to join the team, as well as another, finger quotes, daughter of Thanos, Nebula, who is the blue and purple striped-faced woman who is bald and has, like, the robot parts. Like, she's got a little metal thing around her eye, and she's got a robot arm. She apparently also, it's hard to tell, because in some scenes she is shooting at, like, Gamera, and in others she seems to be standing next to them as though she is a part of their team. And in the first movie, she is just straight up a villain. She sides with Ronan. She wants to become the favorite daughter of Thanos, so her jealousy leads her to want to kill Gamera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we know that those characters are there. But our two big things are Ego and Mantis, and then whoever these gold people are. I'm going to start with the gold people. And again, I'm talking as though I don't know any spoilers. If you read this Volume 1 of Guardians of the Galaxy, you may have been introduced to a character named Adam Warlock, who has gold skin and sort of magic powers in this iteration. He's a character that's been around forever, and he is super, super important to the comic book arcs involving the Infinity Gems. He is one of the main characters in the Infinity Gauntlet, which is what I believe the Infinity War movie is going to be based on. And then subsequently, he is also involved in the Infinity War books, Crusade, Infinity Abyss, Infinity Revelation. The past few years, they've been putting out new things that's basically Thanos versus and or teamed up with Adam Warlock. And we did get a Easter egg of Adam Warlock's cocoon, which is how he heals himself and sort of resurrects himself with the new power set. There was a cocoon hidden away in one of the corners of the shots in the collector's room in the first Guardians, but I feel like I read something saying he wasn't going to be in this one, or he'd only be in the third one. I don't know. But I would assume that maybe these golden people are going to lead to that. Now, we have a female golden person, and there was a female version of Adam Warlock known as Kismet in the comic books. Adam Warlock and Kismet were two of a kind. They were created by an organization on Earth, and this clearly looks like a whole society of gold people. So I don't know. I am pretending that I don't know whether that is or is not related to that. I'm not doing a very good job of this, you guys. But point is, I don't know if we're going to get Adam Warlock. That's genuine. I don't know if we're going to get Adam Warlock in this movie, but there are these gold people. So keep an eye on that, because that's clearly going to be, I think, something important. And if not, it's going to push the story forward. Ego, the Living Planet, is a planet with a face on it. It has eyes and a nose and a mouth and a rockin' goatee. Ego has a very long history, so I won't super get into it. The idea is he was created by this other cosmic being, along with a moon that disappeared at some point, and a duplicate planet that was owned by the Collector and wasn't revealed until like the 2000s when they did a massive overhaul of all the characters. But he was introduced back in like the 60s and 70s era of Marvel. His thing usually comes around to him like losing his mind and going insane and trying to suck other things into the body of the planet to make it stronger. He runs into the Fantastic Four a lot, the Silver Surfer a lot. He has a propulsion unit that was put on him by Galactus at one point, so he can rocket around the universe at his leisure. Originally, it was a rocket strapped to him to fire him to the far corner of the universe, but eventually he learned how to control it. Now, how can Kurt Russell walking around looking like Kurt Russell be Ego the Living Planet? There is a storyline in which a portion of this living planet was taken away and then ended up growing into what I believe it called itself Ego Prime, which was a human-looking piece of Ego the living planet. So it could be that this piece of ego became this, human-like being who then, went on a date with Star-Lord's mother and resulted in Star-Lord being born. If we indeed find out that he is. He could also just be showing up to say he's Star-Lord's dad for who knows what reason. Now, in the comics, Star-Lord's real dad is a guy named Jason, or Jason, I think it's J''S-O-N, who is the ruler of a planet known as Spartax, and the people are known as the Spartoi. So in the comics, Star-Lord is half alien, but he's half Spartoi, and technically the prince, and maybe at some point he becomes the king or the ruler or whatever of this whole society, of the Spartoi people. The other character we're introduced to in the trailers is Mantis, played by, I'm going to murder this name, Pom Clementif. That wasn't too bad. And in the trailer, she's shown physically touching the hand of Star-Lord and then being able to read his feelings, and notes that he has feelings for Gamera. Her origin in the comics is also sort of convoluted. There's been a couple of retcons. She has mostly been a member of the Avengers and is known as being an excellent martial artist, as being from Vietnam in some iterations of the comic. In some, she's from off-world and is an alien. In others, she has memories or implanted memories or something where she comes from Vietnam and is originally Vietnamese. And her whole story arc in the comics has to do with her astrally projecting herself and then that getting split up, and then her astral form. So think if you've seen Doctor Strange, I guess, in a manner of speaking, the astral form goes into plant life and reconstitutes a new body for her. And there have been times where literally various aspects of her personality have become separate, I guess, mantises. So it's not like a Deathly Hallows thing. It's not like a Horcrux. She's not intentionally splitting herself up so that she doesn't die. When these aspects of her end up getting killed, I think they just merge with her original psyche or mind or spirit or whatever it is. Mostly, she is just great at martial arts, and she is known as the Celestial Madonna, meaning she is fated to give birth to the Celestial Messiah. And there's this whole storyline in the comics where this happens, and she sort of gives in to the reality that she is to merge her spirit with the spirit of this race of plant people. Not Groot, though I wouldn't be surprised if they mix them together somehow, because you have somebody now who can, without understanding what I Am Groot says, she can understand emotions and that sort of thing. Though if Groot is baby Groot in this thing, that would also, I guess that'd be kind of weird. In any case, she ends up merging with these plant people and gives birth to whatever this Celestial Messiah thing is. And as far as I'm aware, nothing really ever came of that in the comic books. But she was a member of the Guardians for some time. And I don't know if they'll ever work in this plot point, and I don't think you find it out in the first volume of Guardians. So spoilers for the comics, as well as potentially the movie in 3, 2, and 1. In the comic books, we get an explanation for why all of these random people who probably wouldn't work together agree to work together. And it's because Mantis uses her psychic abilities to nudge everybody and calm them down a bit and make them all more agreeable. And this leads to a giant falling out of the Guardians of the Galaxy later on in the series, when they all feel that basically they were duped or mind-controlled into becoming a team. And in the comics, Star-Lord is a bit more, I guess, militarized. If you've read the comic, then you sort of see he's just coming off of a war when the Guardians of the Galaxy joined together in the comic books. So in his mind, it doesn't matter. This is a thing that needs to get done. Somebody needs to be out there guarding the galaxy. So he asked Mantis to, for sort of the greater good, kind of control everybody's minds in order to make them work together. So I don't know if we're going to see any of that in this movie, but I kind of hope so, because I think that'd be really cool. I also think not, because then I've spoiled it for everybody if that's a major plot point. But at least now you know, if that happens, then that is based on something from the comic book. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot more of Thanos. He did more in the first Guardians than he did in this movie. I would love to see more of Thanos. I would love if the majority of the movie was helping build Thanos, because we only have a couple more movies before we get to Infinity War. And Thanos starts in space, and that's where these guys are based. And that kind of rhymed. Something, something. There's a trace of Thanos. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. But the rest of my notes are all things that I have now decided are potential spoilers. So I guess that's it. It's a short one this week, you guys. But I hope that at least kind of knowing who Ego is and kind of knowing who Mantis is will help prepare you for this movie. And luckily, we don't have, outside of the actual spoilers that are out there, the advertising campaign did not tell us much. I am really looking forward to this movie because, in general, all they tell us is it's about Star-Lord going to try and figure out who his dad really is. Like, that's the official synopsis, which is weird when we get told that Kurt Russell is his dad right in the trailer. So I'm thinking there might be something deeper. But in any case, I'm really excited for this movie. I hope you guys are excited for this movie. And I hope you see it so you can listen to our podcast right away when it comes out. I'm assuming maybe it'll be Sunday or the Monday following the movie comes out, because we have to go see it, we have to get together, we have to talk about it, because of course we have to talk about it, and then I actually have to go through and edit it. And we'll see if we can get maybe Dr. Ray on as well, so we can get at least one other voice, so it's not just Liam and I going back and forth. And that'll be really good. So let's close out the show, shall we? With the dap dap bow doop doo, ooga ooga chaka. Ooga chaka, ooga 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 chaka, ooga ooga comic box zip thing dear. Dipping sound of me. That is it for this week, you guys. As always, please, star ratings and reviews. Unfortunately, it is the 28th. I did say by the end of April. As of this recording, we were not able to get all of those extra ratings or star ratings or reviews to get us up to the 20 mark. I thank everybody who tried to get us there and who offered those reviews. I will probably try to come up with something then for the end of May, because I still want to keep pushing, because it's the only thing that outside of word of mouth that anybody can do to help the show. We don't spend money to advertise. We don't make money off of the show. We just want to keep spreading out the Geek to Geek cast community, because we got some really cool stuff that's coming. Maybe potentially, if you've been listening to some of our other podcasts, another podcast might be joining the show. There may be a real play of some sort on the way. Maybe. So if you would please head over to iTunes, search for The Comic Box, tap on the podcast, tap on reviews, and you can go ahead and leave a star rating or review there for us. I would appreciate that so very much. The Comic Box is part of the Geek to Geek podcast network. You can head to geektogeekcast.net and sign up for email updates, sign up for our email list. We are looking to have some original email content headed your way soon as well. So if you'd like to get some of that, I'm not sure what it's going to be from our show. Maybe it's just going to be some thoughts on what I'm reading that week. You know, if you were somebody who really liked that part of the podcast before and it's gone, maybe I'll write up, one or two sentences about the comic books that I read that week, or an extra suggestion for you to pick up that doesn't have to do with the theme of the following week's show. You can also go and listen to episodes of all of our shows on iTunes and Stitcher. We're even on YouTube if you want to go to YouTube. You can find us on Twitter at ComicBoxCast. You can find me personally at Noby, at KNOWBY. There's a link I'll still throw out so you can find Liam on Facebook. We are on Facebook as well, so search for Geek to Geek Podcast Network and we will pop up. And for longer, more in-depth discussions, if you want to tell us what you're super psyched for Guardians of the Galaxy, I will say let's not put our reviews in that thread. We'll start a new one, a new thread that's just for spoilers and reviews of the movie. But that is at reddit.com/r/geek-to-geek-cast. So come on out there. We always have really good conversations, and I would love to hear from you guys. Lastly, you can email me at thecomicboxpodcast@gmail.com. And since Liam's not here, I'm going to say, yeah, you can send diatribes and you can send manifestos, but just until Liam comes back. And that is it. I'm closing the comic box. I'm super psyched for this movie, you guys. I'm really looking forward to it. I hope you are too, and we will see you next week with a ba doo doo bow doo ba da ba doo da 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 doo down ba da 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 doo down doo bow ba da 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 doo Guardians of the Galaxy.